Well, I was a section leader, and I had 12 men under me. We got on the left Portsmouth in the ship, and in the middle of the night we got on the landing craft. It was, I don't know, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning. It was dark. And we had to go down the scramble nets, as they call it, and as the waves would come and it would raise it up and down, and the landing craft would swing out away from the boat or the ship and then come back, and we had to make sure that when we were going down those nets that we didn't miss the landing craft and fall in the water. Otherwise, that was it. There's no hope of helping us. 7:30, I believe it was, when we hit the beaches. There's 2 young lads, 18, and the oldest, I don't know just what age he was, but he had a wife, and I think he had 3 children, and he was killed the second day we were in there. I wasn't so scared of what was happening, but it was jumping out of the landing craft because we had no idea how deep the water was. When the door opened, we had to get out because we were being shot at and bombed and the whole noise. We had about 60 pounds of equipment on us, so, you know, if you couldn't, well, even if you could swim that much weight, there's no way. There was a little Oliver, he was a Bren gun, and he was about 5 feet. And he had one fellow, there was 2 worked on the Bren gun as a machine gun, and he was a big tall guy. If it wasn't for him, well, Oliver would have drowned. He had no education, little Oliver. His dad worked in the bush, and he was always moving from one place to the other. He couldn't even sign his own name. And when he put his X on the pay, I had to initial it to show that it was his marking, or otherwise he couldn't get paid. That was the way it was. And those 12 men were just like your family. They depended on you for everything. If you had to make sure they went to the kitchen, got their food, and made sure they were in the right place for night, and you had to, every 2 hours, you had to have sentries 24 hours a day, and because I was their leader or their corporal, I would have to make sure that they didn't fall asleep and that they warned the next 2 guys to take their place at night. And that goes on for 24 hours a day. Before I got wounded, we were in there pretty near 5 weeks. And I never had my clothes or boots or anything off. And the first 2 days, well, when we landed, we had a can of bully beef and a can of hardtacks. That was like crackers, of a packet about that, and a quart of water, and there was maybe 5 or 6 horehound candies. They were hard candies. They told us that might have to last for 3 days because of the landing and getting the equipment in to feed us, and that's what we had to do. Like, I never lost a man the first day I went in there because we landed and we had to clean out the pillbox, and any enemy that was there, well, we had to dispose of them. There was no, because there was no place to move them, and if they come out of their foxholes or whatever they called them, and you disposed of them. That's all. There was no way of, because you had no place to put them. And Kirk Meyer, that was the commanding officer of the SS troops, and you couldn't trust him. There was no way that you couldn't even turn your back on them, because so brainwashed from the time they were, I think, 4 years old, and that's all they knew was kill or be killed. That was the way it was. The only thing, you had to get rid of your enemy. That's all there was to it. Because we had to clean the beaches off quickly so the next bunch could come in, so they didn't have to do that. And the only thing that saved us in a way, there was, like they called them, amphibious tanks. I don't know, you likely see where they had this apron around, they dropped in the water, and they were protected, kind of protected, and they were firing 16-pounder shells at the pillbox to kind of distract them so that we could get in and clean the pillbox out. We'd throw in a hand grenade in the pillbox, and we'd go in there, and if there's any live enemy in there, well, you just dispose of them. That's the way it was. Later on in life, you know, you start thinking about these things. Those young guys who were just like we were. It's either you or them. That was the way it. After the first night we were in, I don't know how far we were in, maybe 8 or 9 miles. Well, we were too far out, so the next night we had to move back 2 or 3 miles on a straight line for defense on each side of us. And we were there in the front lines for 5 weeks. Kirkmeyer and he was always attacking us, and we didn't know when we were going to get shelled, and we were in our slit trench for that 5 weeks. And we had to stay under cover until at night is the only time we could get out. Well, I think the second night the kitchen was supposed to feed us, and a shell hit the kitchen, and so we had to make do with our hardtack and pulley beef for another day. That's all. We couldn't drink the water in France because we didn't know whether it was poisoned or what. And then we had little pills that we put in the water to kill any bacteria that later on, but that didn't kill the poison or anything, so we had to be awful careful. You see, if one of your men got, or any one of the men or the men next to you got wounded, you couldn't stop to help them because you'd be the next one. And there was one lad that got shot. Well, I knew him. He was from Duffield. He got hit in the shoulder and went out and come out at his back, and he was paralyzed. He was laying there, and the tide was coming in, and he was calling for us to help him. And every time the tide, it kept coming up, and it was up to his waist. But we couldn't do anything because we had other. And we didn't know what happened to him until about 20 years later. I happened to be in Dauphin, Manitoba, and by gosh, if he hadn't survived, and I talked to him. So, but that's the kind of things that keep coming. Maybe not every day, but you wake up in the middle of the night and you've had those dreams, and you have no one to talk to about it. You don't want to talk to it. Later on in life, you start thinking about those young guys who are just like you were. And it's tough. You have no, well, you don't want to talk about it anymore. You just try and bottle them up. You know, lots of people don't realize, like, we were in there and we were supposed to come out and have a bath and change of clothes. They decided that we had to attack Caen, and that night, that's when 12 bombers come over and bombed Caen, and we went in, and that's when I got wounded, and I was in hospital 5 weeks the first time, and then I was out for 2 weeks, and I had to go back in because of infection. I don't know whether the mortar shell landed right beside me, and when I realized I lost all my equipment pretty well, and the only thing I can remember to make sure I had my Sten gun and my bottle of water, because I knew I could at least live another day or maybe a day and a half as long as I had water. And then they shipped us. I went to the field dressing station, and they were going to take my hand off because it was cut right through. And the doctor says, no, we haven't got time, just wrap it up. And they sent me back to England, and it took about 10 years before I could close that hand up. But, you know, the doctors were tremendous. I like to come to visit someone, but I like to know what they're doing today. And I know a lot of them, they like to talk about what happened, and you know, I guess it's just the way I am. I try and keep myself busy enough that I don't have to, if I can help it.